What's up? It's Sam Walker here with Ringside Intel, here to talk about the 10 greatest boxers of all time. Of course, this is a very subjective list, and we want to hear your feedback. So if you agree, if you disagree, go ahead and drop that in the comments. But let's go ahead and try to narrow down over a century of great fighters into this list of 10. Coming in at number 10 is somebody who gets grossly overlooked in a lot of these conversations, and that's Sweet Pea Pernell Whitaker. Pernell Whitaker was a defensive wizard. He was someone that was very difficult to touch. You'd be standing right in front of him, throwing everything you had, and you just couldn't do it. You just couldn't land cleanly on the guy, and he would kill you right back in return. I mean, he was a savage, and he was someone whose style was so difficult to train for, so difficult to emulate, and really has not been duplicated. We've seen a lot of people take bits and pieces of what he has to offer, but no one quite does it like Sweet Pea Whitaker. Coming in at number 9 is a name that you'll see on a lot of these lists, and that's Rocky Marciano. Rocky Marciano was the only heavyweight champion in history to retire undefeated. That alone is an amazing feat, not to mention some of the wins that he has over great fighters such as Joe Louis and Joey Walcott. This was someone who was known as a hard puncher, a guy who could throw all sorts of power and give it just as good as he could take it. Coming in at number 8 is a man who is synonymous with Mexican boxing. Of course, Mexico has a deep tradition, a deep history of boxing, and has produced a ton of champions, a ton of legendary fighters, but none of them are more loved than Julio Cesar Chavez. Julio Cesar Chavez won titles in 3 divisions. He also fought 88 times before he ever saw a blemish on his record, which is astounding. He still holds the record for consecutive title defenses and championship fights as well. So Julio Cesar Chavez undoubtedly deserves to be in the top 10. Coming in at number 7 is one of the more recent legends that the sport has produced, and that's Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao won titles in 8 different divisions. Amazingly, the crushing power that he possessed at the smaller end translated all the way up the scale. This man was an absolute monster who was able to knock out people and put together a spectacular highlight reel. He also was one of the few in this modern era that was able to cross over into mainstream success, bringing in the money with it, and he still stands as one of the greatest pay-per-view draws in the sport's history. Coming in at number 6 is a man that a lot of people first think of if you say the word boxing, and that's Iron Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was the youngest heavyweight champion in history, and while his time at the top was brief, it was memorable. This was someone who put together a ridiculous highlight reel of all sorts of crazy knockouts. This was also someone who redefined the business of boxing as well. And while he gets a lot of credit for being one of the hardest punchers in history, it's hard to look over the fact that he was one of the best tacticians that there ever was. He was someone who can understand the game, break it down, and break down his opponents accordingly. Coming in at number 5 is Roy Jones Jr. It's impossible to talk about this man without talking about the pure athletic talent that he brought in the ring with him. That talent could have put him at a high level in many other sports, but fortunately, he chose to hone his craft as a boxer for us fight fans to enjoy. He won titles in middleweight, light heavyweight, and had an amazing performance in a heavyweight title fight against John Ruiz. Beyond just what he was able to do in the ring with his fists, he was also quite the showman, adding taunting into his game, mentally getting his opponents off balance. Roy Jones was the total package as far as the show was concerned. Coming in at number 4 is Floyd Mayweather Jr. You can love him or hate him, but the results speak for themselves. He simply was a master at his craft. He was someone who was able to keep defense first and didn't necessarily lead to the most exciting fights, but it preserved him for the longevity of his career. He was also someone who defeated a who's who of the generation that he came alongside with, so it's impossible to deny his place among the greatest of all time. Coming in at number 3 is the Brown Bomber Joe Louis. His 25 title defenses over 11 years make him the most dominant champion in heavyweight history. His historical significance also can't be understated. This was a man who knocked out Nazi Germany Representative Max Schmeling in front of the world as World War II loomed in the background. Coming in at number 2 is a man that you knew belonged here, Muhammad Ali. Now, we can talk about Muhammad Ali as a civil rights figure. We can talk about him as the face of an entire generation's socio-political movement. We can talk about his protesting of the Vietnam War. But we can also talk about what he did in the ring. And what he did in the ring was simply spectacular. In the ring, he made the perfect blend of crushing offense with beautiful, graceful defense. Using athleticism and reflexes, he was able to defy the textbook of what boxing could be. And it's amazing to think that despite these great accomplishments, despite winning titles, despite beating some of the legends in the sport, this was a man who actually had his prime robbed from him. So Muhammad Ali simultaneously is one of the greatest to do it, but also one of the greatest what-if stories in sports. Coming in at number 1 is Sugar Ray Robinson. It's almost impossible to overstate just how important he was to the sport of boxing. His success at multiple weight classes spawned the term pound for pound, and he was known to be such an incredibly versatile fighter that he could not only change styles between fights and face opponents with completely different looks. He also was able to make these changes mid-fight, coming out from different rounds with completely different styles. So what do you think? Who are the 10 best boxers in your opinion? Go ahead and drop those comments. Remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay locked into Ringside Intel. I'm Man Walker. Peace.